What do you think is the maximum number of add-on investments for a single portfolio company that has happened in the last 5 years, say? And what industry do you think that was in? So 2 is how many add-ons has one portco done on the max side? And what industry do you think it was in?
Thank you all for joining for yet another wonderful session of Office Hours, as per usual. But for those that are new to this, we typically have a topic, a more macro topic, industry trend topic. Andy kind of teed that up with the question around volume of add-ons. I think it was the last 5 years, and then industry. So we always try to tease out some trends and other things that kind of catch our eye as we're sort of monitoring things like transaction activity and things like that. We often like to cover, and we're fortunate that we have so much to cover in terms of new features or sort of a deep dive in best practices in using features for those that are customers on the platform, and more of an FYI for those that may not be customers. And then we, of course, have some time for Q&A. And so we have opportunity to submit questions in advance. Rest assured, we'll make that a little easier going forward. We do, I think, have a few in the bank Andy will cover, but of course, anyone on this call, as things come up, feel free to leverage the chat. Oftentimes we can just answer it directly as a quick, hey, here's our quick, reaction to the question. Sometimes it'll be let's just schedule a separate call afterwards, which is fine. Sometimes, the confidential stuff or stuff, deal related came up in the past. But without further ado, I'm Dan. That's Andy. For those of you that don't know or have never seen us before, Andy, I think I will pass the microphone to you to kick things off, and I'm sure everyone's on the edge of the seat to find out
Oh, yes. So
what's
thank
next.
you for the intro. So we had guesses of, well, we only had one real guess with the quantity is 25, 2 people guess HVAC. So it's crazy. The largest number of add-ons was 71. I should have told you to aim high. I thought that was crazy. But when you find out the industry, it makes more sense. This was a portfolio company called Mercer Advisors, and they did a roll-up of investment advisory firms. And they were owned by the private equity firms Genstar, Oak Hill, and Atlas Partners. So triple ownership, triple PE ownership, but 71 add-ons. They were busy doing deals. So there you go. With that, as part of the initial introductory comments here, I wanted about macro and what we're seeing in the marketplace. I want to talk about add-ons and you'll see how the RIA is going to tie into the back part of this. But am I sharing my screen now, Dan?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, so I know that this graph is a little blurry. Apologies for that on the screen share. But this is essentially a histogram of add-ons, and it's number of add-ons on the horizontal axis. So the buckets are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 10 plus. And then the y-axis is the number of portfolio companies in the last 5 years that have done 1 add-on, 2 add-ons, 3 add-ons. And what really we should have done here is we should have put 0 as a bucket as well, because the majority of portfolio companies, platform investments, do not do an add-on. But if they do, the median's 2. Most of them do 1, 2, or 3. And so as you're thinking about, if you have a deal that you're working on that's a potential add-on size, the single best indicator that a private equity firm has an add-on strategy is that they've already done one, or their portfolio companies exhibit add-on strategies, because not every private equity firm has that as their playbook. So anyway, this is the histogram. And like I said, the number one is 71 add-ons, which is, way out to the right on this graph. There's one firm that did that in the RIA space. So there you go. That's if there's any questions about that, you can pop them in the chat. But with that, what I wanted to do is transition the conversation over to some new features that we are launching and will launch in the next week or two. So this is going to be sneak preview. So let me share my screen on the platform. And then keep in mind, if you have questions, pop them in the chat, because the last bit of this Q&A or anything that you might have questions about. All right. One of the recent adds we did to the platform is we enhanced the view of the service providers to the private equity funds. So let's take an example. So I'm logged in, I'm on search database, I'm on the private equity left-hand menu. And let's say I want to know, let's just filter since I'm in Texas here, private equity firms in Texas, Reba's in Texas too, Dan's in Pennsylvania. Private equity firms in Texas that do, let's say, mid-size deals. So now we're down to 94 private equity firms. And maybe we want to sort by those that have the most number of portfolio companies. All right, so let's look at Main Street Capital Partners here, has 179 portfolio companies. I'm just using that as a way to get to a firm. So, of course, as you guys know who use the service, you can certainly read the details about it, the private equity firm. You can see their portfolio company holdings, and you can click on any one of these to see the details of a particular holding. I know you guys already know this. I'm just walking through the menus. We're going to land on funds. You can see the key executives working there, noting that the person with the orange dot is the exact executive feature. That's the right person to contact for inbound deal flow. And then let's look at their funds. This is the part I wanted to drive to. In this case, they have Main Street Loan Fund 1, Loan Fund 2. And if we open it up, what I wanted to show you is we've added the service providers here to their funds. Auditor, prime broker, custodian, administrator, marketer. They don't use a prime broker or a marketer, but they have the other ones filled out here. And what's interesting is if we said, well, let's learn more about their auditor. If I click on Grant Thornton out of Chicago, we'll open up a new tab. It drops us down to, surprise, a new data module. This is our registered investment advisors. You won't see this yet, but you will in the next week or two at the pro and elite subscription levels. So we have the RIA data module here. We open it up and it's showing us Grant Thornton. We see their profile and we see all of the funds that they do audit work for. And in this case, it's 2,130, 527 billion assets under management that they're doing audit work for, the sum of the AUMs of the funds. And of course, you can look at any individual fund and learn more about service providers. And of course, we know Grant Thornton is the auditor, but here are the other service providers for this particular fund. In this case, it's a hedge fund.
Yeah, I saw Cayman Islands. I knew that right away.
Yeah, right. So with that, that's a good transition. So that's on the private equity firms, looking at a private equity firm, looking at their funds, seeing who the service providers are to that fund. Which brings me down to, let's jump down to the registered investment advisors. This is the new data module. I wanted to show you this, and then we'll open up to Q&A. Again, this is a sneak preview, but we have the firms, their funds, and the service providers to those funds. Let me just walk through an example. Let's say we wanted to know all of the RIA firms in Illinois. And Dan's going to chime in here in a second as to why this is meaningful and potentially applicable to you guys. And there's an advanced filters here. I'll click on this. And let's say we wanted to know, how about those with more than 100 clients and maybe less than 30 advisors? I'm just giving us some filters for something to look at. All right. So now we have 48 RIA firms in Illinois with these filters. If you click open one of them, of course, we'll see the profile of the RIA firm. We'll see their executives as normal, name, title, email that you're used to, and the funds that they operate. Oh, no funds on that one. Bad example. But the idea is here is you can find investment advisors and financial advisors. I'm going to let Dan chime in.
Yeah, well, no apology needed, Andy, because we told people it's not live yet, so technically
Yeah.
still beta. But yeah, a couple things I wanted to mention here is one is obviously this is something new, and it seems like this is now office session 4. I think we've had something new to talk about every single session that we've had. It's just, from our perspective, there's many data providers out there. Some are good, some are maybe less optimal for your use case. We're a team that takes customer feedback seriously. We have internal idea generation. We take that seriously, and there's just constant reinvestment in the platform. And so this is obviously a good example because this is brand new as opposed to something we covered in previous office hours that we launched back in Q1. So when I have conversations with folks about private equity info and this platform and what sort of, separates, I think generally speaking, and I'm selfishly using my example as a customer for more than a decade before our partnership came together, I view it as one of the single best business development tools out there. Some databases have sort of single use, find your private companies or whatever the case may be. When I think about our team's use case, it was building a network first and foremost, finding people that are relevant to me for me to get to know and meet, and figuring out are there ways to work together. And so when I think about our customers, so obviously the folks on this call, we work with a lot of intermediaries, a lot of lower middle market intermediaries, investment banks, business brokers, some PE guys, recruiting firms, CPAs, you name it. It's a pretty broad swath of industries that we cover, but I think a lot are oriented on how can I use this to generate new business, right? And so deal flow broadly defined, whether that's CPA work, advisory work, tax work, M&A work, et cetera. And so I think that a lot of us, I mentioned at the top of the call, and it just kind of ties in well that I've seen, a couple of you guys on the road recently, but the in-person networking is huge. And so there's certainly ways where if you know you're making either a city visit or attending an ACG event, we were just on a team call this morning talking about Atlanta, Texas, and DealMax, among other things. Who else in that region should I be reaching out to based on my persona, right? If I'm a banker, I maybe want to meet funds, I maybe want to meet CPAs or law firms or RAs, people that could be sources of lead and deal flow for me. And so with us, obviously, there's very quick attribute and search filtering to say, you could use our AI for this, by the way. It's a good example of like, hey, I'm a banker, I'm going to this city. Who ought I meet with around potential for M&A? But of course, you can still use I'm going to California, as you can see Andy typing it along here, within the RA space, and then further just sort on like a city because you're going to what's going to pop up first. Well, Alameda, but either way, finding the folks that are within your cities. Anaheim's a good one because I'm a hockey fan. Um, for in-person networking purposes. And as those of you that are customers know that when you click through, you can add these firms to a list. The download is going to include a summary on the business and a contact. None of that's going to change across the modules. That's one huge, use case. Specific to the RIAs, hopefully what you saw was interesting, but to wrap into the use case here, because they have a lot of these custodial and audit customers and things like that, a lot of them are touching private companies directly. And so whether you're doing the audit work for some, Fortune 1000 or sort of the local manufacturing business in pick a city, they could also be relevant folks to be networking with and, reaching out to develop a relationship like, hey, if I'm a sell side guy and you have someone, here's what I've done. I'd love to meet and greet, where it's appropriate. Law firms kind of falls into the same category, right? There's a lot in here that we tie the law firms to to the transaction. So there's ways that you can sort that around industry in addition to cities, but it's another category of quickly accessing the folks that would be most relevant to you to add into your own outreach. And we give you virtually everything you need. Summary, deals they've done, locations, folks that work there, the exact executive as Andy's highlighting here, along with LinkedIn's. I mean, it's literally everything sort of in one spot. Get in, get what you need, get out, and get to work in terms of developing some relationships. Andy, okay to move to the last one?
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
keep going.
So I know I'm kind of micro machine man talking here, and my younger employees didn't get that reference when I brought it up on a call a couple of weeks. It made me feel super old. But another one here that may be less obvious is within PE land, the aged portfolio companies. And so you're all familiar that when we were doing some keyword searching around here, and you search, say, just pick an industry or whatever the case is, the output on the screen includes an investment date, and you can sort by that. Most recent, I think, is our default. You can essentially flip the list to have essentially the legacy deals. And I know it's going to take Andy a few clicks to get there, but he's actually going to use the date filter there as a proxy.
Oh, yeah, you're meaning like older than.
Yeah, older than. Yeah. So when you're thinking about, from a business development standpoint, if, HIG just bought a business a week ago, they're probably not looking to sell. Although, I don't know, maybe that's a good example that they very well maybe. But for the folks that made investments, I mean, think about the time period over the last 5 years or so, COVID times, remote times, M&A obviously took a huge hit in 2020. came back in spades in 21 and 22. There was a lot of deployment in terms of new investing activity in that time period specifically. Well, they're probably looking at a sheet internally at the P group to say, look, we made this investment 4 years ago. The performance is whatever it is 4 years later. We previously covered, and Andy, this is maybe worth resurfacing, the average hold periods is kind of getting pushed out and out and out.
It's about 5.8 years right now,
Yeah.
almost.
So, but the point is they don't make the decision a month before they want to go to market for who they're going to use to sell the business or have any kind of involvement in prepping that company for sale. Starting that now might be a really good use of time, and we have a way to get there. And so, um, yeah, case by case basis, of course. But again, you leverage all the filtering here and all of the industry attributes, the timing and things like that. It's just another way from a BD perspective that you're avoiding the shotgun approach of just sending out your note to 50,000 people and seeing what sticks. This could be something that's in a much more targeted way. I think we're all tired of the shotgun and broad blast emails, but in a much more targeted way that you genuinely know something about them to develop that relationship. So there's many, many, many other use cases we could go through here, but those were the four. So in-person networking and city visits might be obvious. I don't know how often people use that, but very relevant, particularly around ACG events. I talk to folks in ACG land that, you know, when I'm going to a conference, I'm actually going to extend a day. Like Atlanta, I know is coming up because we were just talking about it this morning. But if I'm going to extend a day in Atlanta, who ought I meet with outside of attendees at the event or people that I didn't get a chance to that are based in and around Atlanta, Alpharetta, area? The RIAs and law firms are similar-ish. I call out RIAs separately because it will be a new module launching, but similar kind of approach there. And then aging of the portfolio companies. Anything I
Cool.
missed,
Thanks,
Andy?
man.
I know that
No,
was a
good.
lot.
All good. That covers the answer to one of our uh, pre-submitted questions. So let's just run through these tabs. We also track the RIA funds. I think this is maybe a little less interesting to the people on the call, so I'll be fast here, but you can certainly say, well, show me the funds with a 100 to 500 million AUM that's located in the Midwest, we'll say, that is a private equity fund. I'm going to pause here before I click so you can see the categories. All right. So down to 716 funds, funds on the left, the RIA firms on the right. But perhaps more useful is the service providers to those funds. So let's say we wanted to say, I wanted to know who are the auditors for private equity funds. And so we have, well, of course, there's 300 of them. And we can click on, say, Grant Thornton. We can see the profile about this firm, and like we saw before, and see their funds. And we're back to where we were at the beginning of this call, and it all ties to someone did 71 add-ons in the RIA space. And that's all I have to show you for new stuff for at least today. We're putting out more stuff continuously. We're excited about the plan for 2026. Got some really neat stuff coming in the pipeline, both in terms of data, features, tools, functionality. And with that, I'll take any questions that might be out there. If
We
any.
do have one in the chat.
Yeah.
Great question.
Patrick asked, could a search be created to identify zombie funds?
So I'm going to jump in because I think that a
Please.
question or two can help refine the question slightly. What I think one definition that we would be able to tackle within our platform would be funds that have neither made new investments nor exited something in some period of time, call it 2, 3 years maybe, where they're just kind of stagnant. Is that a version, Patrick, that you meant by the question? I realize I'm asking and waiting for some typing, but Andy, using that example, almost like a least active, but up to a point, meaning like they might have been active up to 2022, but nothing since.
Into fund life opportunities, right?
Yeah.
So we track the portfolio companies, both platforms and add-ons tied to private equity firms. We don't currently track them tied to specific funds. That said, if you look at the AUM graph of a fund over time and you see it's sort of depleting down, either they've made some bad investments and mark to market isn't good for them, it's a bad story, or they've bought and they've come to full realization and they only have a couple of one or two portfolio companies left, or they have a little bit of dry powder left. But you could see that in the bar chart, perhaps. But I don't know that we're going to be the best resource for exactly what you're asking for there, Patrick.
I'll take it a quarter step further, Andy.
Yeah.
Let's surface that with the research team internally to see what they can find. A, to follow up with Patrick. B, I mean, there might be a broader audience. I don't know how much you want to promote that. We may make some people upset that we're calling them zombie funds or something like that. But
the zombie checkbox.
It's a great question, though. And because, I know we have access to the data we would use to compute it. It's just a matter of what does the output look like, I think, from our side.
Yeah. I see your text, Patrick. Thank you for the
Perfect.
question. Thank you for the follow-up. My suggestion is get with Reba, and she can either push you to me or Leslie, who's our senior researcher, or somebody who can best answer the question.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Right.
Anything else? Any other questions? We are 24 minutes in, and I'm out of things to say.
Not another question, but I just thought that maybe at the beginning of the call, you pulled down the deal size drop down and maybe just show people that it has changed a little bit.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that is a
Sorry, I
change that
didn't
we
say that
made.
very well.
It's a subtle user interface change, but
Yeah.
we had a lot of people asking us when we had small, mid, large, mega, well, what does that mean? So we went ahead and put 0 to 50, 50 to 250. You see and those are by enterprise values. And what that means is these are the typical deal sizes for platform investments that these private equity firms make. Obviously, they can be outside of range here and there, but generally speaking, it could be a very, very large firm in terms of the number of deals they do and the number of executives they have at the PE firm, but they might still work just on mid-size or small deals. HIG Capital would be an example of that. Prolific acquirer of companies and a great firm and a lot of people, but they don't do mega-sized deals normally. So this is a nice filter. So we have a multi-select for that instead of the check boxes that were there. And generally speaking, we've kind of done that across the board in some of these drop downs, is have multi-selects and just be a little more user friendly. That's an example of some things that are happening in the background that we don't really announce. We just try to make it incrementally better all the time. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Andy.
Anything else? Otherwise, we will hop, and everyone can enjoy their Fridays.
Yeah. Well, appreciate you all joining.
Questions.
Thanks for the
Thanks, Jamie.
questions, etc. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Okay.
Yeah, January probably.
Emails and LinkedIn's. Yeah. Because I think the next one is scheduled for like the 19th, which
no one's going to show up for that.
Love you all,
including
I think we all probably want the break.
Nobody wants to see us that close to the holidays.
Probably not. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Reba.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Take care. See ya.